Hi, my name is Lisa Medved, and this is an overview of my interviews with our special education staff and administration. I interviewed our special education teacher, our assistant principal, and a paraprofessional, all of whom work with me at Swallows Charter Academy, a public charter school. Child find procedures, we don't encounter very much because we don't have a preschool. Mrs. Williams gave the most detailed information about the child find. Mrs. Winters mentioned that it is a district committee, and Mrs. Martinez has no interaction with it, but she did mention when she did daycare, she did have to communicate with parents regarding delays. The most challenging part of a role in special education varied from role to role. Mrs. Winters mentioned the difficulty of working with special education teachers and establishing flexible schedules. I, as a general education teacher, also can attest to that. That is a difficult thing every year, trying to figure out the schedule of when everyone will be pulled. Mrs. Martinez focused primarily on the students and the difficulty in getting to know them and to establish trust with them. And Mrs. Williams had a very administrative answer as far as being able to provide the facilities and the materials, resources that are needed. Most rewarding part of the job, consensus across the board, was the successes with the kids and seeing them grow and grow past and their goals and moving on to higher goals. And that was a reward for all of them, and I also would agree with that. That is a reward for me as well in the classroom. Supervision of special education staff. So basically, if you have the right people in mind, in place, according to Mrs. Winters, Mrs. Williams, everyone's doing their job, then everyone else can do their job. Direct supervision, Mrs. Winters likes to confront with questioning versus dictating. Why aren't you pulling the student? She will say instead, do you have the student on your caseload? So that's a difference and a piece of advice she gave. Mrs. Martinez gave advice regarding supervision of making sure the time that the people under your supervision, that their time is being used well, and also seek their opinions, because she sees times when maybe her time could be used a little more wisely or efficiently, and doesn't feel like she can voice that. So good, interesting information. Working with parents, communication. That goes with question number 6 too, communication. Communication with everyone, positive, not always negative, and routine, consistent communication, not just when a meeting's coming up. But consistent communication is key to keeping the relationship open and effective. Working with regular education teachers, again, like I said, communication, being flexible, and going above and beyond as for Mrs. Martinez, what is expected. She likes to have that relationship where she can be counted on and can be expected to perform in order to help the students and help the kids. Advice for first-year administrators. Advice from Mrs. Winters, and I found this to be very interesting because she's speaking from experience, is to listen to the special education teacher and don't speak out of turn or without knowledge. Know the law, know the requirements, but don't overpromise. Mrs. Martinez suggested having patience with the kids and the teachers, and Mrs. Williams just suggested that you need to get to know the staff and develop relationships with everyone in order for the special education process to be effective. Role of the special education teacher and the administrator or principal. Mrs. Winters tended to see them as very similar, working together and know what's going on with kids and essentially doing what's best. Mrs. Williams and Mrs. Martinez separated them out. Special education teacher is working directly with the student, and general ed teachers collaborating with each other. whereas the principal is responsible for resources and other things. That being said, the principal needs to have access to resources and have suggestions on hand, because the special education teacher cannot be expected to have all of the resources available and know how that will work with the budget and other things. So the principal needs to have access to and knowledge of the resources that are available and be willing to jump in when necessary. And then finally, interviewing a potential principal, the answers varied a bit. Mrs. Winters really, based on her other answers, it's not surprising that she would like someone who's open and flexible, willing to listen to ideas. Mrs. Martinez, based on her answers, not surprising that she would like someone to just be able to, jump in and do things wherever help is needed. It doesn't matter if that's part of your job or not. And Mrs. Williams, as an administrator, is looking for other administrators that have a compassionate heart, someone who is interested in helping students, helping special ed students in particular, and an administrator who would like an administrator who thinks outside the box as well, always being creative with resources and finances and funding. So thank you for listening to my overview, and have a good night.